Hello, my name is Aaron Witten, and it is January 14th, 2018, and I am doing my final project for my Introduction to Education course. Um, and this project looked to the students to propose their philosophy of learning and how it interacts with a certain philosophy of education or a certain education theory in today's society, and I chose my favorite personal learning theory to be cognitivism. And today I will explain to you what cognitivism is, and I'll give you a definition of cognitivism. I will also give you a cognitivism versus behaviorism, and I will compare and contrast the two. I will go into a bit of philosophy behind cognitivism and why I adhere to it and why I think that it makes more sense from a philosophical standpoint, because I believe it's necessary to do that. I will give a brief overview of the history of cognitivism, when it started, and why there was a big shift in the education world in the 1960s. I'll explain why cognitivism kind of overtook behaviorism at that time. I think that's also necessary, and I have my minor in philosophy and my bachelor's degree in social sciences, so it's going to be fun for me to go back and do some things that are related to that. I will also go into what cognitivism looks like in the classroom, and I will also go into my favorite sub-theory in cognitivism called the elaboration theory that really, really connected with me and resonated with me. I will also tell you why cognitivism works overall in alignment with my personal philosophy of education. I'm going to get started on a brief definition of what cognitivism is. Cognitivism is the educational belief that in order to sustain true learning, one has to open the black box, some will call it, of the human mind to actually grasp information. So mental processing, thinking, your memory, knowing something, problem solving, it's all in your mind, and it must be tapped into in the education realm or in the classroom to attain true learning. So the idea that your mind can be tapped into and you can learn things through your ability to think and to be a deep thinker. I will explain the differences between philosophy and cognitivism, or between cognitivism and behaviorism right now, and we're going to look at it from a philosophical perspective, just because I think it really, it really shows this. So I will talk about the idea of being an animal or a human being. Now, behaviorism is the idea in the education realm or in any realm that someone is only going to do something if they're programmed to do it in their makeup, or if they do it over and over again. They're not learning anything, but they do it based on just a response. And that response is going to happen no matter what. You're not learning anything. You're just going over something over and over again, and you have a structure, and that is why you're doing something, because you're programmed to do it, almost like an animal. So what I look into, it's a good metaphor for this, is animals versus humans in philosophy. You can see animals do things out of behavior. They do things because it's in their DNA to do things. They know how to eat, fish swim, birds fly. Animals understand how to do things because it's in their makeup to do so, but they're not actually creating complex things. They're not doing anything that requires any deep thought. When you look at a human, they can certainly do things that require great mental cognition. Humans create amazing things, amazing structures, and things that clearly require a great deal of thinking and use of the mind. So that's what differentiates human beings from animals, and I can kind of see that in the learning realm as cognitivism versus behaviorism. We can use our mind, so why not use it in the education realm, rather than just structure something and burn it into your mind over and over again. Really kind of diving into a material and focusing on that and continuing to learn about it seems to be the better way for me. And that's why I believe cognitivism makes much more sense to me. And then from a historical standpoint, cognitivism was created by Jean Piaget, and she founded the idea of cognitivism in 1936, and it was not in the forefront of the education realm until the 1960s. And the 1960s were a very turbulent time in the United States of America. There was a lot of the civil rights movement was going on, and it was mainly a shift from the idea of the utilitarian idea that the group is more important to a more individualistic mindset. So the idea that every person can learn, every minority, women also can learn, they can do things as an individual. We were escaping the more utilitarian and group-minded mindset and moving more towards an individual idea. And that totally was totally seen in the education realm as well. So when behaviorism was kind of being thrown into the rearview mirror in the 1960s, and with the social changes and the educational changes, cognitivism kind of took hold and became what most people saw in the education realm. It started to make much more sense, and it was a good shift that kind of followed the rest of the identity of the United States in the 1960s. And in the classroom, I'm going to go over what I believe cognitivism looks like in a classroom, and I will go over my favorite sub-theory of cognitivism called the elaboration theory. So first, we'll get into the elaboration theory, which was created by Charles Rueglith at Indiana University in the 1970s. And it's a structured look into the idea of presenting a concept, a principle, or a task as the teacher presents it thoroughly, a broad overview, but very easy to follow and easy to understand. And then after the teacher presents this broad concept, the students then dialogue with the teacher about it. And then whatever the students find most interesting about the topic that was just discussed by the teacher, they go more into detail and really dig into the deep underlying themes of whatever they're learning about. A good example of this, maybe if you're in a history class and your teacher is doing a World War II lesson. First, the teacher, under the elaboration theory, it would look like the teacher would teach a broad overview of World War II. So who was involved, the dates, maybe the deaths, a brief overlook at the results of the war, which land went to whom, Axis and Allies, a broad overview of World War II. And then after that, what do the students like the most about the lesson? And they would interject their voice, and then from that you go into deeper views, such as, I really like the Pacific campaign of World War II. Okay, so then we're going to go more into that than the European campaign, or something like that. It's just an example of how this would look in the classroom, the elaboration theory. So basically, clear presentation of material from the teacher, and then student feedback, and then deeper engagement into the concepts that the class was most interested in. And that theory really resonated with me because from the beginning, as a teacher, I want to be the kind of teacher that presents a material very clearly. Everybody can understand where I'm coming from. And then based on student feedback, we can go into what most interests the class. So cognitivism, in summary, works in the closest alignment with my personal philosophy of education because I don't want my class to be like a structured thing where every student comes in and knows exactly what's going to happen and just read out of the textbook the whole time. I want my class to be based in good teaching from a text or from another source. It doesn't have to be a text, but good instruction. And then from a well-instructed lesson, we can move into more to deeper concepts. And it makes total sense to me. And that's the way I want to teach. And that's why Cognitivism resonated with me, and elaboration theory was my favorite, and why I think behaviorism is not as good a philosophy of education as cognitivism. Thank you.